Did you know you can grow your own fertilizer? You don't even need to leave the garden. Today we're talking about comfrey. I'll share its amazing uses in a permaculture system, and then I'm going to share a big mistake that we made so that you don't make the same one. Comfrey is amazing. It's often called a permaculture super plant because of how many uses it has. But it's also a very stubborn plant, and once you plant it, it's there to stay. So stay tuned to find out why that's both amazing and mildly terrifying. So as you can see, comfrey is a large-leafed herbaceous perennial. It's actually related to borage. There is some debate over whether one can call this plant a dynamic accumulator. The roots draw up the nutrients from really, really deep down in the soil and bring it up to make it more bioavailable for your other plants. What they can agree on in the scientific community is that these plants have very, very deep roots, from like 6 to 10 feet, depending on the specific varieties. Root very deep and are there to stay. More on that later. So there are many, many subtypes of comfrey, but there are two main ones that people talk about in the gardening world. One is true comfrey, which spreads by seed. The other type is Russian comfrey. Bocking 4 or Bocking 14 are the specific varieties that have been engineered to not spread by seed. Most gardeners will recommend getting the Russian variety because then you have control over where it spreads and grows. Don't ask me how to tell the difference between them because I still don't know. They can both have purple flowers apparently. These plants can get up to 1 meter tall if they're really happy, and it grows very vigorously through the warmer months. Here in winter it dies down so there's no leaves at all, but the rhizomes will stay in the soil and re-sprout in the spring. So why is it great? Well, first off, it has flowers which attract bees and other beneficial insects to your garden. It's also very useful, as you can see, as a ground cover living mulch in the warmer season. But of course the main reason that gardeners grow it is for its fertilizing capabilities. So it's high in potassium, phosphorus and nitrogen, which are all key ingredients in a good fertilizer. And we've also used it along the edges of our food forest areas to prevent the kikuyu from invading these areas. Its roots are so dense, the grass has a lot of trouble getting through that barrier. Comfrey has also historically had a lot of medicinal uses. Apparently, if you make like a poultice and then rub it on a wound, it will help reduce bruising and swelling. You don't want to eat it though, definitely don't eat it. But chickens can eat it, which is really weird. As you can see, they're very wet and floppy. So how do we use this wonder plant in the garden to feed all our plants? Well, the easiest way is very simple. You just chop it and drop it. That's it. Fertilize, done. Video done. All right, you just literally rip the leaves off and put them on the ground. That's it. You've made mulch. It's gonna fertilize the plants as it breaks down. It's gonna cover the soil. It's gonna be great. And this plant is gonna regrow very soon. Doesn't take long at all. I can do this 5 or 6 times during a growing season, at least. That's the simplest way to do it. It's really easy to do just on like a walk around the garden. If you're just going for a little stroll, just see some comfrey, go, oh, that needs some mulch, pick it up, drop it, done. No tools required, but you can also use tools. It's a lot easier with tools and less bad on your shoulders. So if you've got lots to do, I recommend using the tools. I've used a whippersnipper to do it. It is very wet, so it does kind of cover your legs if you are doing it with a whippersnipper, because it's so moist and it gets sort of stuck to you and then you need to go for a swim afterwards. Fine in summer. The other way is with a hedging device, which is quite good because it will just chop it off without making it so small everywhere. And they break down quite quickly anyway, so it's fine if you just chop the whole leaf and leave it on the ground. You do need to be quite careful when you're doing this, if you're doing it by hand and you're ripping it, that you don't pick up any root nodules at the same time, because it is kind of sometimes possible to rip out a leaf and think that you've just got a leaf, but it's actually a root nodule as well. And any tiny little root nodule will grow. So if you're chopping and dropping, just make sure you don't have any roots in the mix, because you'll just end up with more comfrey plants than you wanted and you'll be growing in places you don't want them. More on that later. This is what it looks like with a root nodule on it. So I can't put this on the ground now or it will grow. So I'm going to be very careful about where I drop this one. It's also great to bring your compost back to life. You can put this in your compost bin and the added nutrients and moisture from the comfrey leaves will just activate that compost and make it all a lot more rich. It's a couple more steps of effort, so we don't tend to do that, but you definitely could if you're a compost nerd, which I am not. The other thing that's good to do with comfrey is to make comfrey tea. No, you're not drinking it. Don't drink this. This is tea for the plants. So we've got several barrels like this around the property. And when I've got an excess of comfrey, I just pick a bunch of it, chuck it in there, fill it with water and let it sit. Now it's best that these barrels stay in a shady spot it's shady-ish here. After 3 or 4 weeks, you will have a very good liquid fertilizer. We put it in a watering can and then make sure to dilute it so that it's the color of like a weak tea. You don't want to burn your plants because this stuff is quite potent. Depending on your ratio of water to comfrey leaves, mine tends to be reasonably dilute because I have such big barrels, but it's always safest to dilute it so that you're not running the risk of burning your plants with all of this yummy fertilizer. But you can fertilize your plants with this liquid fertilizer every 2 weeks during growing season and your plants will love it. I don't do it nearly that often because I haven't figured out a good way of getting it out of these barrels yet, because it's like I'm still just like bucketing it out into a watering can and then doing it manually. So that part needs more thinking about. I got it on me. Comfrey tea is great as a fertilizer, but it does smell like something's crawled into a swamp and died there. So you want to put it downwind from any buildings, / your neighbors may know when you're using it. Yum! I'm gonna smell like this for the rest of the day now. So growing comfrey is ridiculously easy. It's honestly more of a challenge to stop it growing once you've got it. If you're buying seed, you're buying the wrong variety, so don't do that. You need to get root cuttings, and honestly, the tiniest little bit of root, it can be like this big and it will grow still. Chuck it in the soil, forget about it. It does like a lot of water, but we have a very wet climate here, so that's why it thrives. It will tolerate clay, sandy soil, you name it. Pretty much you can plant it any time of year except for midwinter when it's dormant. But even then, you put the root in the ground, it will just stay there until spring, and when it feels like growing again, it will probably grow. So our comfreys actually come from this one small patch that my grandmother planted on this property back in the 70s. And we have propagated that. The only problem is I'm not 100% sure still which exact variety is this. So more on that later. You need to be quite careful about where you plant it. So rule number 1, only plant it where you know you will never dig. You can't put it somewhere now and then decide to move it later. That is a recipe for disaster, and I will tell you about my disaster with that very soon. It's really great along the edges of perennial beds. It can be dangerous if you're putting it around your annual vegetables, as you are going to be digging in that area more often. The other place it's great to plant comfrey is underneath your fruit trees. You're essentially growing the fertilizer right around the roots of this tree, and you know you're not going to be digging here because, well, there's a fruit tree here and you're going to leave it there. Great at stopping the kikuyu from coming into the garden because the root is so dense that it will stop it growing through. Remember, it dies down in winter, but it grows huge in summer. So you will have some bare soil wherever you put it in the winter months. We interrupt this video with a cautionary tale about the importance of planning in permaculture, especially in regards to comfrey. I can't make a video without admitting to this big mistake. This area is called the slope. I could make a whole video on the design of this, but suffice it to say, 2 years into the process of having this area, we realized we needed to redesign. We realized we needed to add berms, swales, and sort of terracing in order to manage the water flow and nutrient runoff better. Unfortunately, this required us to dig up some fruit trees and move them. Do you see where this is going? Picture this. After an exhausting weekend involving excavators, raking, and much manual labor, we finally got this area in a better state with the fruit trees in their new positions. The dirt is everywhere, but a cover crop is planted to bring back the life. Imagine our excitement in early spring that year when life sprouts again from this soil. Only to then realize that our comfrey population had more than doubled. So you remember how I said that if you don't dig up all the root, any tiny root section will just turn into another comfrey plant? Yeah, that's what happened. Comfrey is now growing in the middle of the paths that we made, in the middle of the beds that we made, as well as under the fruit trees. It's growing where the fruit trees were and where the fruit trees now are. It's everywhere! On top of that, I recently discovered a seed in one of the flowers. So I'm not even sure what variety my grandma planted back in the 70s, and I can't ask her anymore, so that's unfortunate. Please, does anyone know how to tell them apart? I really need to know. Help! I mean, there are definitely worse problems to have, but yes, you can have too much of a good thing. I'm trying to grow pumpkins in here, and I'm finding myself needing to constantly pull out the comfrey from between it so that it doesn't get overrun. And on top of that, in winter when it all dies down, there's just nothing in here. So that's also a problem. Please learn from my mistakes. So that's comfrey. It's an amazing multifunctional plant that can be your best friend in the garden, but it does require some careful planning so that it doesn't turn into your worst enemy in the garden. Permaculture is all about observing and interacting, so please observe this mistake and interact by not doing what I did in your garden. But I do honestly recommend it as a fertilizer. The fruit trees are thriving in here. My only issue with this slope is not being able to plant a lot of other stuff in sort of the mid layer, just because there is so much of this comfrey in here. That being said, it's working very well to build up the soils. I just don't really want to comfrey monoculture. Have you dealt with aggressive comfrey? How would you manage it? How would you get rid of it? And also, which type is this? Oh my God. Hey look, a root sac. Great, I've just spread it again. Your girl is desperate for help. If you liked the video, please subscribe to the channel. I make educational and entertaining permaculture videos. I don't actually make a living from doing this just yet. I would love to work towards that though. So I did the maths. If every one of you subscribers leaves me like $1 a month, then I could quit my day job and just make garden videos all the time. That'd be great. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. I'm having way too much fun doing this. Oh man, that reeks. There's a bird on the camera.